Welcome back. In this video, we will discuss one of the important novel of Joseph Conrad, Lord Jim. Lord Jim is a novel by Joseph Conrad, originally published as a serial in Blackwoods magazine from October 1899 to November 1900. An early and primary event in the story is the abandonment of a passenger ship in distress by its crew, including a young British seaman named Jim. He is publicly censured for his action, and the novel follows his later attempts at coming to terms with himself and his past and seeking redemption and acceptance. In 1998, the Modern Library ranked Lord Jim 85th on its lists of the 100 best English language novels of the 20th century. With this brief introduction, now let us discuss the plot of the novel. Recovering from an injury, Jim seeks a position on the Patna, a steamer serving the transport of 800 pilgrims of an exacting belief to a port on the Red Sea. He is hired as first mate. After some days of smooth sailing, the ship hits something in the night and the bulkhead begins bulging under the waterline. Captain Gustav thinks the ship will quickly sink, and Jim agrees but wants to put the passengers on the few boats before that can happen. The captain and other two crewmen think only to save themselves and prepare to lower a boat. The helmsmen remain as no order has been given to do otherwise. In a crucial moment, Jim jumps up into the boat with the captain. A few days later, they are picked up by an outbound steamer. When they reach port, they learn that the Patna and its passengers were brought in safely by a crew from a French Navy ship. The captain's actions in abandoning both ship and passengers are against the code of the sea, and the crew is publicly vilified. When the other men leave town before the magistrate's court can be convened, Jim is the only crew member left to testify. All lose their certificates to sail. Brierly, a captain of perfect reputation who is on the panel of the court, inexplicably commits suicide days after the trial. Captain Charles Marlowe attends the trial and meets Jim, whose behavior he condemns, but the young man intrigues him. Racked with guilt, Jim confesses his shame to Marlowe, who finds him a place to live in a friend's home. Jim is accepted there but leaves abruptly when an engineer who had also abandoned the ship appears to work at the house. Jim then finds a work as a ship chandler's clerk in ports of the East Indies, always succeeding in the job, then leaving abruptly when the memory of Patna incident catches up him with. In Bangkok, he gets in a fight. Marlowe realizes that Jim needs a new situation, something that will take him far away from modern ports and keep him occupied so that he can finally forget his guilt. Marlowe consults his friend Steen, who sees that Jim is a romantic and considers his situation. Steen offers Jim to be his trade representative or factor in Patusan, a village on a remote island shut off from most commerce, which Jim finds to be exactly what he needs. After his initial challenge of entering the settlement of native Malay and Bugis people, Jim manages to earn their respect by relieving them of the depredations of the bandit Sheriff Ali and protecting them from the corrupt local Malay chief Raja Tunku Alang. He builds a solid link with Doramin, the Bugis friend of Steen, and his son Dane Varys. For his leadership, the people call him Tuan Jim or Lord Jim. Jim also wins the love of Jewel, a young woman of mixed race, and is satisfied merely. Marlowe visits Patusan once 2 years after Jim arrived there and sees his success. Jewel does not believe that Jim will stay as her father left her mother, and she is not assured that Marlowe or any other outsider will not arrive to take him from her. Her mother had been married before her death to Cornelius, previously given the factor's role by Steen for her benefit. Cornelius is a lazy, jealous, and brutal man who treats his stepdaughter cruelly and steals the supplies Steen sends for sale. He is displeased by Jim's arrival and resents him for it. Gentleman Brown, a marauding captain notorious for his evil ways, then sails into Patusan, his small crew on the brink of starvation. The local defense, led by Dane Varys, manages to prevent the marauders from looting the village and holds them entrenched in place while Jim is away in the island's interior. When Jim returns, Brown deceptively wins Jim's mercy, who hesitantly negotiates to allow them to leave Patusan unobstructed, but reminds Brown that the long passage downriver to the sea will be guarded by armed men. Cornelius sees his chance to get rid of Jim. He tells Brown of a side channel that will bypass most of the defenses, which Brown navigates, stopping briefly to ambush the defenders he finds out of revenge. Varys is killed, among others, and Brown sails on, leaving Cornelius behind. Jim's man, Tam Bitam, kills Cornelius for his betrayal. Jim is mortified when he receives word of the death of his good friend Varys. He resigns himself to his earlier commitment that no villager would be harmed and chooses not to flee. Jewel, who had wanted Jim to attack Brown and his ship, is distraught and begs him to defend himself and never leave her. Jim then goes directly to Doramin and, in front of the village, takes responsibility for the death of his only son. Devastated, Doramin uses his flintlock pistols given him by Steen to execute Jim by shooting him in the chest. On his regular route, Marlowe arrives at Steen's house a few days after this event, finding Jewel and Tam Bitham there, and tries to make sense of what happened. Jewel stays under the protection of Steen, who presages his own death. In the next section, we will discuss the important characters from Lord Jim. First is Marlowe. Marlowe is a sea captain in the merchant navy who helps Jim after his fall from grace, trying to understand how one of us could lack the bravery and judgment expected of seamen. Marlowe is also the narrator of three of Conrad's other works, Heart of Darkness, Youth, and Chance. Jim is a young parson's son who takes to the sea, training for the merchant service as steamships mix with sailing ships. He dreams of heroic deeds. He is a strong, tall, blond Englishman whose life is the story told by Marlowe. Next character is Captain Gustav. Captain Gustav is the captain of Patna, an Australian born in Germany who is interested in the money made from this ship with no concern for his honor as a captain. He is a man of huge girth. He orders the engineers to free a boat for them to leave the ship. After learning ashore that the ship came in ahead of them, he knows his certificate will be cancelled and he leaves, never seen again. Next character is Montague Brierly. He is the captain in the merchant service with a perfect reputation. He sits in the court that hears the case of Patna crew, telling Marlowe that Jim ought to hide somewhere as he can never work as a seaman again. A few days after the trial, this superior man kills himself by jumping off his ship at sea, leaving no explanation. Next character is Steele. He is head of Steele and Company, friend of Marlowe and a man with a long, interesting life. He has had success in the trade in the East, collecting produce from various ports in the Dutch colonial areas and settling far away from his native Bavaria after losing in the uprisings of 1848. He learned lepidopterology, which became his passionate hobby, gaining him a reputation for all the specimens he sent to contacts in Europe in this age of scientific discovery. And had a child, both lost to him by a disease. He understands Jim's temperament instantly. Next character is Jewel. She is daughter of a Dutch Malay woman and white European man never named who deserted them. Her stepfather is Cornelius. Her mother died a year or two before she meets Jim. Next character is Cornelius. He is former factor for Steen and Company on account of his wife whom Steen admired. He is a lazy man of no morals and brutal. He is Malacca Portuguese. When replaced by Jim, he does not leave the area nor does he find any useful occupation for himself. He connives with the murderer Brown to kill Jim, succeeding indirectly after Brown's men kill Dane Maris. Cornelius is killed by Tam Itam, who sees him after the attack and realizes the role he played. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Thank you for watching.